Europe is having a ton of trouble with its Turkish immigrants. In the old days, of course, Europeans used to do battle with the Turks because the Turks were trying to conquer Western civilization. Nowadays, Europeans actually invite Turks to sweep into their countries in droves because things have changed. The Turks are still trying to conquer Western civilization, but Europeans are now weak and stupid. The latest troubles began when Turkey tried to get Turks in Europe to support a Turkish referendum that would give dictatorial powers to Turkey's president Recep Erdogan, pronounced Erdoğan because the G is silent, as in Angster. Until recently, Turkey had been slowly modernizing because of the secularizing reforms instituted last century by Mustafa Kemal. Kemal is usually known as Ataturk because of all the people shouting, "Ataturk, you instituted secularizing reforms." Unfortunately, these reforms have been gradually eroded by President Erdogan, pronounced Erdoğan, because the G is silent, as in whiz. How come you're eroding all those great reforms? The Turks tried to gin up support for the president's most recent power grab by staging rallies in European countries. But the Europeans shut down the rallies because they were afraid they would lead to riots and threats of holy war. To prove these concerns were unfounded, the Turks rioted and threatened holy war. The Europeans put down the riots, which angered President Erdogan, which is pronounced Erdoğan because the G is silent, as in hottest. The Turkish president accused the Europeans of being Nazis, which the Europeans generally don't like because some of them actually used to be Nazis, but are now pretty nice. What's more, Turkish hackers spread the Nazi accusation by hacking them into very important Twitter accounts, like those of Justin Bieber, Amnesty International, Forbes magazine, and myself, which made me feel like a very important person who was accusing the Europeans of being Nazis, even though they're now pretty nice. Geert Wilders, a hardline anti-Islamist with amazingly gigantic hair, hoped that he would ride the Turkish troubles to election as the Dutch prime minister. Wilders had promised to de-Islamize the Netherlands, but his election bid was rejected because the Dutch apparently prefer to Islamize, and also the big hair was considered a negative. All the same, the Europeans do finally seem to be debating whether letting Islamists sweep over their countries, rape their women, kill their men, and destroy their culture is really as good an idea as it sounded when they first thought of it. On the one hand, the EU recently enacted a ban on headscarves in the workplace, feeling Muslim women should be treated fairly at work before returning home to be chattel again. On the other hand, Germany's Angela Merkel recently bowed to Erdogan's request that a German comedian be prosecuted for insulting the Turkish president. Personally, I'd have told Erdogan to et stuffed. The G is silent. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, it's Monday. We're back That was a brutal Klavanless weekend. All these classic people were dying. Chuck Berry, Jimmy Breslin, great Daily News columnist, Derek Walcott, good novelist, good poet and novelist. A lot of people gone, but now we're back, and we'll bring them all back to life. So it's okay. And we have best-selling cultural correspondent Michael Knowles is with us to discuss the entertainments that came out from the left and right. Knowles, of course, his brilliant book, Reasons to Vote for Democrats, is now number 3 on Amazon, despite or possibly because of the fact that it has no words inside. It is now, and we are giving this away, are we not? If you subscribe for the year, you got to have an annual subscription, just a lousy $8 a month for a year, and we will send you a free copy of this book. And if we run out of this, we'll just send you a ream of paper. Now, you've noticed the quality of workers we have here, and you've probably said to yourself, how can I stop that from happening to my company? Well, the answer is don't just go to the nearest prison or mental institution, but go to ZipRecruiter.com. ZipRecruiter.com is the perfect way to find people because you can go on all the important job sites at once. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 200 plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all pardon me, with a single click. You can find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. And this way you don't have to juggle emails or calls to your office. You can quickly screen the candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by Fortune 100 companies and thousands of small and medium-sized businesses, and why we here at the Daily Wire often sit up late at night weeping into our beds that we didn't use ZipRecruiter.com when we brought this motley crew on to run our shows. Right now, my listeners can post great jobs at ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. That's ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. One more time to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. If you're not smart enough to use ZipRecruiter.com for free, you're probably not in a position to hire anyone anyway. So go ahead and try it. It's got to be better than what's going on here. All right, so I was gone for the National Review Summit. That's why so many people died over the Clavenless weekend. This was the National Review Ideas Summit, where all these important people and me were there. You know, I walked on, as I walked on stage, Tom Price, the new health health secretary, was walking off, and as I walked off, Paul Ryan was walking on, and I thought, like, what was I doing there? You know, like, I don't know anything, but it was really good. I like to go there. It made me think back on another. I go to these National Review things, and I was on one of their cruises, and I was on a panel on one of the cruises, and John Miller, a pal of mine, who's now a professor at Hillsdale, asked the panel in general, how did we think history would record Barack Obama? And everybody had a kind of elaborate thing what history would say about Barack Obama. And I said, I thought that Barack Obama would get one sentence in history for a while, that he was the first black president. And then after that became unimportant, he would have no place in history whatsoever. I mean, he would be like Millard Fillmore or like, Martin Van Buren or something like this. I now believe that to be that I got that exactly right. Now, of course, I always get these things exactly right. For those of you who are leaving comments saying that I'm wrong, it'll save you so much groveling later on if you don't say that stuff. But I really do think Obama he's like a kind of vague memory. Like, I can barely remember what's going on, and it makes me realize that these 8 years of Obama were like a dream. They were like a dream that the left was having out loud, of this salvific black president who was going to lift us all, and everything was going to be different, and now let's give him the Nobel Peace Prize, give him the Nobel Peace Prize before he does anything, because now everything will be peace. And in fact, it was the longest period of war under any president ever. The fewest number of laws passed any president ever. Now everything he's doing is being erased one way or another by Donald Trump. His party has been destroyed, and I just don't think he's going to have left much of a mark, except on the minds of these people who imagined it. And so now we have Donald Trump. And, there's this old saying that nobody knows exactly who said it, that the news is the rough first draft of history. But really now, the news is an alternative history. It's like reading science fiction. It's like reading a world. So we're entering this big week. This is a big week for the Trump administration. Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court guy, his hearings begin. The health care law is supposed to come up for a vote as early as Thursday. It has one more committee to get through. And that comes up for a vote. And now there are all these investigations. These are going on as I speak, so stuff is probably happening as I speak that I'm not watching. But the intel investigations into Russia, on Russia influence on the election, and Trump's accusations that Obama wiretapped him and all this stuff. So here's a piece from the Wall Street Journal this morning. I'm just going to read like a little bit of it. It gives the general impression that the press is giving us about this administration. Since President Donald Trump's election, equity and bond markets have been on the rise. Business leaders are applauding his call for tax cuts, and consumer confidence in the U.S. economy is up. It's actually way up. But halfway through his crucial first 100 days in office, it has been tough going for the new president's agenda that inspired much of that optimism. So people are optimistic, but the agenda is in trouble. Republican infighting is bogging down a health care bill and the litany of legislative issues lined up behind it, including an overhaul of the tax code. A series of court rulings are stalling his immigration policy changes, and his own tweets and White House comments are broadening several probes into whether Russia tried to influence the outcome of last year's presidential election on behalf of the Trump campaign. So let's take a look at this for a minute. The one part that I immediately agreed with to some degree, is that a series of court rulings stalled his immigration executive orders, not necessarily his immigration policy changes, because one of the things about those executive orders is they're kind of irrelevant. Like, he doesn't need to do that stuff. There's so much he can do by just calling up ICE and saying enforce the law that would change everything. But it is true that these judges who have struck down this latest executive order have betrayed their trust. And I mean, it's getting, on the right, people get a little bit, what's the word, hyperbolic maybe? People shouting it's a coup, it's a left-wing judicial coup. It's a couple of bad decisions by a couple of dishonest judges. They're maybe not corrupt, but they're ideologically corrupt. And that stuff tends to rebound. It tends to blow up in your face. So I'm not really as concerned about that. I think that's going to make these judges look bad, and it may even end with the Ninth Circuit being disbanded or rearranged in some way. So, I'm not that worried about this. But let's talk about, for instance, first, since it's happening now, let's talk about these hearings, okay? The hearings about Russia, it seems pretty clear now that there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. They keep saying Russia hacked the election. So far, all that boils down to is Russia phishing John Podesta and releasing some emails and all this stuff. So that is just now a lot of, kind of slander, just people saying this stuff about Russia. So that's going to kind of disappear, I think, over time. If they had anything, we would know it by now. It would be a big scandal. This is a lot of journalists making a lot of noise about something that does not seem to have actually happened. I mean, I do not believe, first of all, I don't believe that Putin could have possibly known that Trump was going to win. No one knew that Trump was going to win. He was looking for information against the person he thought was going to be the president. He was looking to discredit Hillary Clinton because he thought she was going to be the president. Now there is this stuff about the Trump tweets that Obama bugged him, okay? And so today, here's the latest thing we have, is James Comey being questioned by Adam Schiff, a partisan Democrat on the Intel Committee. And Schiff is asking him about these allegations that Obama bugged Trump. And here's Comey.
Director Comey, I want to begin by attempting to put to rest several claims made by the president about his predecessor, namely that President Obama wiretapped his phones. So that we can be precise, I want to refer you to exactly what the president said and ask you whether there is any truth to it. First, the president claimed, quote, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism," unquote. Director Comey, was the president's statement that Obama had his wires tapped in Trump Tower a true statement?
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
So this is no big surprise, right? We had already said in the Republican on the Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, he also said the same thing. But here's what I think obviously did happen. And I say obviously, I'm putting this together a little bit, but it seems to me that the narrative is pretty clear that what did happen is there were legal taps on foreign actors like the Russian ambassador. That some of these actors, as these people do, there's nothing illegal or wrong about it. Some of them talk to people in the Trump campaign. I think Obama decided that he was going to create this narrative. Maybe he believed the narrative. I don't know. He picked this stuff out. He cherry-picked the stuff where legally tapped Russians spoke legally to, people in the Trump campaign. He then changed the rules of who had this information just before he left office so that it was spread around. And somewhere along the line, the names were unmasked. You're supposed to mask any American who gets swept up in these intelligence bugs. You're supposed to not release who the guy was talking to because he's an American citizen. You have to get a warrant to tap his phone, right? So you're supposed to, but obviously with Michael Flynn and possibly with others, that didn't happen. And that's where the criminal scandal really lies, because essentially, okay, to say he tapped the phones, it's not true. And Trump is a loudmouth, and he's a loose talker, and he talks the way people talk when they're in bars rather than the way you talk when you're in the Oval Office. And that's one of the problems with his tweets. It's his own fault. He's distracting from his agenda. It is true. He is. But I do not think it's criminal on Trump's part. I have to stop and say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. We have the great and powerful Michael Knowles, who we only get here by, we have to pay him now to come on. We haven't started paying Knowles, have we? Oh, thank God. All right, but we have him coming on. Come over to thedailywire.com. You can hear the rest of the show, or you could subscribe and you could watch it right on the site straight through.